In this episode, I'll be sitting down with Dennis Walker from mycopreneur.com. If you're looking to connect with Dennis, we'll have links in the episode description. More on that in a moment. In case you didn't know, Dennis has directly inspired some of the content that I've created to promote this show. Specifically, three reels that I've created. I'll show you the first one now. I'm a cannabis industry billionaire, and you know what? Things are going pretty goddamn well for me. I've established a firm regulatory foothold within several nascent cannabis markets across these United States. I've worked to ensure that nobody even has a chance to compete with me. You might be asking yourself, how did I do this? The answer is simple.
Cash money, bitch.
No, seriously, me and my VC bros Chad, Brad, and Thad poured at least $600K into lobbying in one state alone. I say at least because, of course, we weren't forthright with all of our political giving.
Oh! This is a venture capitalist knee.
See that fucking knee? Fucking do it the other way, too.
Transparency simply isn't the goal. The goal is complete domination.
Yeah, me and my buddies Kirk, Aiden, and McKinley are starting a rock band. We're calling it Regulatory Capture.
I'm quickly becoming the king of cannabis. The next industry that I plan to colonize is the psychedelic industry.
I'm relatively bullish about quarter two, but quarter three, let me tell you, it's looking beautiful.
Yeah, we should celebrate. You want some?
What is that?
Weed?
I don't smoke, but I'll try.
Tune into the Chillinois podcast. It's the next big thing, bitch. Chillinois.net/podcast. I was able to recycle all of that footage to cover the recent crackdowns on the hemp market. I'm a cannabis industry billionaire, and you know what? I'm pretty fucking pissed off about these hemp operators. You see, I've established a firm regulatory foothold within several nascent cannabis markets across these United States. And these motherfuckers think they can just come in and sell weed too? I'm sorry, but that's not how pay-to-play works. I'm focused on one thing and one thing only.
Cash money, bitch.
We poured at least $600K into lobbying in one state alone in order to ensure we would have no competition. And then progressives like Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell want to come in and pull the rug out from under us? We're working alongside organizations like Smart Approaches to Marijuana and the Drug Enforcement Administration to close what we're calling a loophole, what some are calling an opportunity. Here's the thing. We believe in limited opportunity. In case you haven't figured it out yet, the limitations are what bring in the
cash money, bitch.
The best part of all of this? We have the community's full support on waging this new offensive. We've learned that if we push stories in the media, the community will do the legwork and secure our market for us. We've successfully framed an opportunity as an attack on social equity. Thank you for helping to increase the size of my regulatory moat. Don't let the gators get you. Check out my work at thecolememo.com. I interview drug policy experts, licensed cannabis operators, prostitutes, people in the cocaine industry, and more. And I've even done silly things like this.
I'm Cowboy Cole, and I'm the quickest drug slinger on this side of the Mississippi. I used to use this little gun when I was a prostitute.
I might be the roughest and the toughest, but things can still get hard for us cowboys while we're out dicking around on the range. That's why I consume excessive amounts of psychedelic mushrooms, cannabis, and anything else that I can get my hands on.
We're going to the psychedelic rodeo.
No matter how sacred or inconsiderate it might be to some.
Cowboys live off the land. That's why I pick every peyote button I find. Who gives a shit if it takes 20 years to grow?
So before we get into the heat of the show, I just wanted to thank Dennis for the inspiration and the laughs over the years. Folks, if you haven't checked out Dennis's content, I highly encourage you to do so. It's great. Enjoy this episode of The Cole Memo. Well, Dennis, I just wanted to say before I get started, thank you again for sitting down with me this evening.
My pleasure, dude. Thanks for the invite.
Yep. And for folks that are just tuning in, this is the Cole Memo. Welcome. I'm your host, Cole Preston. We release every episode in audio, video, and transcript format. So to find the transcript audio or video version of any episode, refer to the description of the episode that you're listening to now. Within that description, you'll find a link that will take you to our website, which will display the transcript for this episode in the platforms where you can find this episode in audio or video formats. If you're unable to locate the episode description on whichever platform you're listening from, I get it, the platforms change all the time. Simply take note of the episode number and just visit thecolememo.com. From there, you can use our search functionality to find the corresponding episode, and then you'll be able to access the audio, video, and transcript version of the episode. You might also find any links that we reference during today's episode so that you can connect with awesome guests like Dennis. If you're not listening to this episode of the Cole Memo on Patreon, then you're listening to this episode a little bit later than our patrons. To become a patron, go to thecolememo.com/Patreon. It's a great way to support our show. Another way to support our show is at thecolememo.com/support. Shout out to our friend Tom G for making a contribution. Our show is funded by listeners like you. It costs a lot, Dennis, I'm sure you know, between equipment, traveling, all of the different things, it all adds up. And so if you're able to support us financially, that's great. But if you're not, another great way to support us is absolutely free. Just subscribe to or follow the show, leave a thumbs up, share it with your best friend. Everything helps. Today is May 10th, 2024. Wow, we're almost halfway through 2024. And like I said, I am so pleased to be sitting down with Dennis. Dennis, this is our second time sitting down, but your first time on the Cole Memo. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Cole. And I have such great respect for your craftsmanship, for your attention to detail. And I'm a huge supporter and a fan. So it's an honor to be here. And thanks for the invite.
Yeah. So absolutely. Thank you for hopping on such short notice. And, I was getting on social media recently, and I'd love to have you maybe back us up here, but I just want to tell you how I came upon, I'm always looking at your content, but recently there's two different feeds you get on Twitter. There's the one where you follow people and you get the stuff that you like at, just the regular, it's called following. And then there's For You. And in my For You tab, it's just blowing up about this horrible reel that Dennis from Mycopreneur made. I couldn't find the reel. It was so hard to find the reel. I had to scroll back. What are people even talking about? It's funny. All I was seeing was the outrage. And I was like, let's see the reel. And I was like, and don't take this the wrong way, it didn't seem very much outside of the content that you usually made. I was expecting you to do something crazy, show your penis or something. I don't know. I was like, what's the controversy here? And so I was like, wow, this is just another good reel by Dennis. And I guess before you dive into that, we should say that one of the main pieces of content besides your podcast that you produce is satirical reels. And I've mimicked you directly in the past. Where can people find your content online? I want to ask that before we go any further.
Anything associated with Mycopreneur, Mycopreneur, and Instagram. I've increasingly been building a X following. TikTok, I'm on TikTok. I've been posting to LinkedIn, although I typically don't post the satirical reels. It's kind of a different audience. Sure. But it was a very conscious decision to try to spread my eggs out in different baskets because of the censorship, the deplatforming, which I've directly experienced on two of the aforementioned platforms. And it's quite ambiguous and selectively enforced. I've made some reels where I'm really pushing the boundaries and there's no issue. And then other ones where I'm like, oh, this is so tame. And it's it gets a community guideline violations. I know you've experienced this. I'm on YouTube as well. I'll probably pick up some more momentum there. And yeah, this is kind of the modern conundrum. It's a blessing and occasionally a curse of having to create for, 12 different platforms and audiences. And I'm embracing it. I enjoy creating. I enjoy building rapport. And I made a conscious decision this year to build my following on X. And I look at it as solving a riddle. Each platform has their own audience, their own niche demographics, their own algorithmic predilections. And so we can get into this whole feud or situation that bubbled up, but I'll agree with you. I think it was very surprising. And that's also why I took a stand, which I rarely do. I've occasionally gotten vitriol and gotten rebuke. People often ask me, you make this edgy content, you're pushing the envelope. Do you get a lot of criticism? And the honest answer is very, very little. And I got what I'd call a vocal minority of pretty intense and harsh criticism about this particular piece. And I felt it was within my right and almost a moral obligation to take a stand and to defend myself on it. So you won't catch me very often replying to these comments, but as you noted, I blew up the whole For You page responding tit for tat to a bunch of the comments, and then it ran its course. And I felt like I said my piece, and I have no interest in continuing any kind of a feud. Although who knows, maybe a couple weeks or a couple months from now, another one will boil over.
You never know. That's what the internet drives. It does seem like that's what the common similarity between all the platforms is. It seems like outrage is encouraged, you know, and it really bubbles up to the tops to the tops of everybody's feeds. So yeah, thank you for giving that background. And one of the things that I was trying to lay out, just in case people aren't familiar, I know a lot of people are huge fans of you, but just in case people aren't familiar, I feel like you really pioneered this format, again, that I've mimicked several times at this point. Some of your fans have even called me out for it. They're like, I feel like he's stealing some of your things, the tongue flicking. And I'm like, oh, absolutely I am. Yeah, no, it's like, it's a compliment.
I'm honored, honestly, because you do it so well. That's something I've had conversations recently and before about. Is like a lot of people just aren't funny. They try to be funny. They want to be funny. That's okay. I'm never going to knock them for trying, but you're genuinely funny and you nailed it. So I look at it as a great honor and a compliment. Please steal more anytime.
Yeah, and I wanted to just be clear. Right? They were saying I was stealing one of your moves. I was like, this. It's like a compliment. It's like the tongue out with MJ. Yeah, you know, you know. Anyways, though, why don't we watch the reel before we talk about it? Does that sound good?
Totally. Let's go.
Cool. All right. I've got it pulled up here. Let's watch it. And for folks that know Dennis, I just have to say this didn't seem out of the realm for me, but let's watch it.
Have you guys heard of HPPD? It's like the more pedantic I am, the more fake internet clout points I award myself. I mean, all this top-line data coming out of rigorous clinical trials doesn't really do it for me. You should hear what a friend of a friend said anecdotally. It used to be edgy to advocate for psychedelics as medicine, but now that the Overton window has shifted, it's edgy to criticize psychedelics as medicine. I'm just super worried about the epistemological bias. I don't know what that means, but it's concerning. How can you truly blind an RCT? You can't. You can't. I've got like 6 burner accounts on X, and I just roast people who have different worldviews than mine. The voyeurism of this whole anonymous vigilante internet stuff really works for me. It's called rage baiting. I just find the most incendiary and alarming stories, pick them out of a sea of good news, and then put a paywall up in front of them. Being critical of corporate psychedelia is my entire personality. If I wasn't virtue signaling about how concerned I am of all these potential risks that these incredibly safe and efficacious substances pose to 1/1000th of the population, I'd have no personality left at all.
Mycopreneur Podcast. Okay. So again, I can say that I can see why, you know, some people might like be like, oh, you called me out, just like people have called me out on the podcast. They're like, Cole, if we get home grow for all, what are you going to bitch about? I'm like, touche. I will find another thing to bitch about. I promise you I will. But I'm just curious from your perspective, like what was the big fuss about with this?
That's the same question I have, honestly. And I was very surprised to receive a couple of pretty direct and pointed rebukes, which is fine. People are entitled to their perspective. Yeah. But I was also very surprised it was continuing. Like I've experienced, especially with a core vocal minority, I would say, that also have a common denominator, and that this particular group seems to have dragged so many people through the mud. It's what they do. And they've kind of built up a reputation for that. And I'm not interested in like naming names. I never, very, very rarely name a name when I'm doing satire. I'll occasionally pick out like a powerful company or a powerful person, and that's fair game. But like, sure. I believe it or not, I look at the world as like a hodgepodge of experiences and memories. And like some of these things, they're directly informed from other people that have nothing to do with this core group that is so concerned. I'm like calling them out, if you will, and skewing the power dynamics. But actually, it was a comment that Hamilton Morris made on stage. People are probably familiar with Hamilton Morris, who hosted a Vice documentary series and has done a lot of interesting work. And he mentioned about how like a few years ago, there wasn't anybody criticizing psychedelics. And now psychedelics have become popular, and that pendulum has swung to the other side, and lots of people are critical of it. And then at some point it'll probably, slide back to the middle. And people's perspectives are valid, right? Not necessarily like pound for pound. I think that's the whole point of debate and logic, et cetera. But I find some issue with being targeted vehemently, and more so than anything with people trying to interpret this as being, this is punching down, this is bullyish behavior. And I had someone say, you had personal attacks in there. And I said, there's not one name, there's not one company. And they go, well, you're clear about this person. I'm like, that's an incredible projection. It's giving yourself a lot of credit, considering that I'm the one who often is making fun of myself. Like, I've been so openly, publicly critical of medicalized psychedelics, of the whole clinical system, of the for-profit system, et cetera, to a point where I've received backlash from many of those folks, like people who don't even talk to me anymore because we were cool. And then I wrote an article for this magazine or that magazine. And then I get an email from them like a couple hours later, like almost immediately. I'm pretty convinced I have like people monitoring, just like watching, to be like, oh, this guy, we need to keep an eye on this guy, because it's uncanny sometimes. Like, I'll make a piece and then I'll hear about it almost immediately after, So that being said, it's like, you can't keep all the people happy all the time. I spent 3 years and will continue to critique publicly what I perceive as these imbalanced power dynamics, the corporadelic culture, et cetera. But I also recognize that these are humans. Like, there's this sense of binary polarity, us versus them. And I've never really been into that. I've never been into this bandwagoning. And I see it now even with the underground, or with these, supposedly like social justice warriors, et cetera. Like, they'll eat their own very quick. And look how long it took for people to put their crosshairs on me. And the irony of it to me is that so few of those people criticizing me have ever supported me in all the great work that people are appreciating that I've done. Like, in all of the call outs or all of the stand on this issue or that, I've received so little recognition, and I'm not like thirsting for it. I don't need their approval. But I think it's funny, one of the comments, one of these individuals who was openly attacking me and criticizing me, that's fine, that's his right. It's also my right to go that and to stand up for it if I so choose. But he mentioned, and it's there publicly visible, for the record, I've been laughing at your headlines. I get a good laugh at, and I can't remember the exact phrasing, but essentially saying you've done good work. Well, it's very ironic and interesting to me. I don't ever recall this individual supporting that work. He's never engaged, never shared the work, he never commented on it. And I have a steel trap memory to the point where it's almost a fault. Like, I remember conversations that we've had, in Denver, like when we met once or whatever. That's how my memory works. And it's like, okay, this is my core issue with these types of groups that just want to do like call out journalism and drag people through the mud. It's like, how come you can't give any credit, any positive feedback, and then as soon as it's time to pile on and go tribal and call out or whatever, then it's all hands on deck? And funny enough, like, this particular group, and maybe they're not a monolith, maybe it's just a core group and there's a few other people, hangers on or whatever. I've got so many messages, like at least a dozen to 2 dozen, somewhere in that range, of other people who have told me like, yeah, they did that to me too. Yeah, like, you handled that well. So at the end of the day, like, you can't keep all the people happy all the time. But I think if you're going to criticize and call out people, well, there needs to be a counterbalance there where you recognize the legitimacy of their work. You recognize the good things. There's the sense of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And that's direct expression I've heard from some of the recipients of this criticism. And it's amazing to me how you can criticize and throw vitriol and say like, someone needs to apologize, you've caused harm, et cetera. But you just never, ever hear it when they're calling out like, okay, this is something you did well, or like, we appreciate this. And that's something I try to do very well. It's like, I don't think I take any criticism towards an entity or myself legitimately if that's all you get. If it's pure criticism and it's like to a person with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And, I've had people come on my podcast who mention this when we start talking just in generalities about the evolution of the psychedelic space. You say, oh, I'm going to get dragged on Twitter. I'm going to get called out for this. And like, that's really sad that that's the culture that we're fomenting and establishing right now, which is one of, watchdogs trying to point out and like post screenshots, dude. Like, to me, that's the bottom of the barrel. That's scraping crap out of the prison toilet right there is to just like post private screenshots. And unfortunately, it's something that just happens all the time. So yeah, I could rant about this indefinitely. And I just don't see a lot of legitimacy to the criticism when that's the only thing or the primary thing you do.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know you super well, Dennis, but from our conversations and just from the content that you make, I feel that I know your heart is in a good place. And so it's like if we were truly calling you out on something, if you like came out and said, and I know you don't talk about cannabis a lot, but let's just use a recent cannabis example. If you came out and said seriously, which that's the other thing, you never really say anything seriously because it's always satirical, it's always tongue in cheek. So it's like you have to take it for what it's worth, which is satire, right? But if you were to come out and say something like cannabis should be Schedule 3, it should not be descheduled like tobacco and alcohol, which would be a very controversial statement. As you just said, the people on Twitter would call you out and you'd get run through the ringer. I would say in that instance, though, rightfully so. And maybe if you like heard the case, you'd be like, oh yeah, no, the logic of cannabis being descheduled just like tobacco and alcohol makes sense to me. I was wrong. But I guess what I'm saying is like I haven't heard a direct criticism of like you did something wrong. Like you said, it seems like a case of like the circular firing squad. Because like I know where your heart is, I guess is what I'm saying. And so like to jump to like, oh, it's almost like you've switched sides. It's like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah, that's it. And I've heard that directly from some of these people criticizing me, literally saying, we're not sure which side you're on, as if it's like capture the flag and like maybe you do have to choose a side. But I've never been interested in that, dude. Like I am a one-person show. I've built, all the connections and networking myself. That's what's afforded me a lot of opportunities. I didn't come into this quote unquote space, psychedelic industry, if you will, with any connections whatsoever. It's simply, I've been a psychonaut for a long time. I've tried to treat people well. I show up to birthday parties when people invite me. I keep in touch with people. And then, so this idea of like, especially on the internet, like random people who have never met me or maybe have met me once, coming out and trying to paint this image of me. It's like, I'll go tit for tat, pound for pound with you. I'm ready for smoke. And they may not know this, but like, I've been into psychedelics since 2005, 2006, like heavily so. And I also have a degree in media studies on the first wave of social media. Like I was there in San Francisco right when Twitter was being launched, right when Facebook was being launched. Twitter was launched in 2006. Facebook was right around there, then YouTube. And I was on the first wave of studying that. So like, not to say that it entitles me to like have some more grandiose perspective, but I have a sense of like how media theory works, how social media works, and especially with this intersection with psychedelics and social media. So like to have people call me out like that. And again, I want to emphasize this is a vocal minority. Like if you go through and you count, it's probably like 6 to 8 people. And right. The common denominator is this same 6 to 8 people seems to have arguments and issues with myriad different actors in the space. And they've unfortunately carved out a pretty bad reputation for themselves. But also, that's what Twitter wants. The more antagonistic, the more critical, the more vitriolic, like that draws engagement. And therein is where, when I had posted about us during this podcast, I mentioned the book 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Right Now by Jaron Lanier, who, I'm ambivalent about Jaron's body of work. I think he's done some interesting stuff, but I think that book is brilliant. And it talks about how social media can unravel the social fabric because it incentivizes and prioritizes extreme, negative, feuding content. So you have people who take advantage of that. And they say, to me, it's like, this is the common denominator. I know a lot of these other actors in this quote corporadelic space, and I extend them the courtesy of hosting them on the podcast, of hearing their point of view. And I've extended the same courtesy to a number of these individuals. Like they might want to frame it a different way, but several of them have, including the most like vocal critics, have fucking DM'd me cold and said like, hey, would love to meet you. Hey, and I go, great, I know your reputation. I'll still talk to you. Even during that conversation, while being completely diplomatic and friendly, I'm just aware inherently, okay, if these people have dragged a dozen or 2 dozen other people through the mud, like the court of public opinion in this echo chamber is going to turn on you. And then my pitch, which I'll happily have this conversation with them, is like, how do you expect to fend off these incredibly well financed, organized, connected, corporadelic actors when it takes almost nothing? It takes a perceived microaggression or a hairpin trigger to turn on people who have literally been lifting you up, saying the same thing. And the cannabis space did the exact same thing. It's like, okay, the underground all wants to come together and form this like self-regulating space. It's happening with psychedelics too right now. Oh, and then you start eating your own and you start making it, this like me versus you thing. And in the meantime, you realize that these corporadelic actors and these well-funded individuals, they're not even on social media. They're not even reading what you have to say. So it's this thing of like, you're a convenient target. We need something to do, so we'll go after you. And unfortunately, they picked the wrong target. And I think in doing so, like with them trying to put me on blast or whatever they want to do, it's actually endeared me to a lot more people. Like I mentioned, I've gained 100 Twitter followers, which, took a while to build up to 1,000 posting regularly. I gained 100 in a day based on this. I gained a whole bunch of researchers, doctors, people texting me, people on other platforms saying, thank you for saying that. Thank you for standing up. And, again, I'm an open book and I try to speak as freely as possible. And unfortunately, we're creating this ecosystem, at least a few vocal minority are doing this, where they will come through a podcast. Like I guarantee you, some of them will listen to this podcast. They will go through a 2-hour podcast and pull out a 5-second sound clip that they don't like and then put it on blast. And like, if that's the precedent you're setting, there is no path forward. You've made yourself irrelevant. I've already seen that, completely irrelevant. And then in, posting what I'm doing, they get ratioed on their own posts. You have other people saying, like, where's the issue here? So again, like to a person with a hammer, everything's going to look like a nail. And I'm not here to keep everybody happy all the time, but I've worked my ass off to get in the position I am, haven't taken any favors, haven't taken any handouts. And then the ultimate irony, I don't draw a salary. I've never asked my audience for a cent. And then you go and, these individuals are like, please fund our journalism, quote unquote, please do this. And I'm like, hey, I've been doing this for 3.5 years, 100% self-funded, 100% staying up late. I'm not blaming anyone. So I feel some type of way about it, but really it ultimately comes down to making a stand and protecting free speech. Because I think there's a group of people who want nobody to have any sense of humor, have any sense of. And my last bit on this, South Park, not for everyone. I love South Park, dude. I grew up on South Park. It's such an important show in my personal creative journey. And there's a bit where they had Isaac Hayes, who played the character Chef. He's a Scientologist in real life. And as soon as South Park made fun of Scientology, Chef became very vocal and he quit the show. And Matt Parker and Trey Stone said, oh, it's interesting. He didn't have a problem when we made fun of Jews, Muslims, Christians. It was only when we made fun of his group that he took a big stand on it. And I think the same thing is happening. Like I spent so much time and bandwidth and like trying to ring the alarm bells, and have also, I think, been successful in my critiques because they're more balanced. Like when you're not just like constantly trying to call out and cancel and be angry and rage mob or whatever, like people are going to take your criticism more seriously and legitimately. And unfortunately, I think in my own view, like this group who before I had publicly defended and remained diplomatic with, they've just completely sealed themselves off. No interest in having any kind of relationship with anyone in that group. They completely drove their point into the ground, and in doing so have elevated me and have endeared me to a broader audience. So I welcome the user-generated content. Comb through this podcast, find the clips you don't like, post it, get me some more views, please. Bienvenidos.
Yeah, I was going to say it gets me more views too. I was thinking about that though as I started this. I was like, oh, if these are the type of people to come after people, I guess they'll have fun going through my stuff too. So I hope that you would. I do put out a lot of content, so if you are going through it, I hope you enjoy it. But I have to agree with you on something. I feel like this is something that I didn't realize that we were kind of similar on. Is like you say, you got to call out what you see is maybe not going in the right direction, but tactfully. So for example, like I get a lot of criticism because I've had a lot of what people call, I don't know how familiar you are with the cannabis space, but a lot of people call the big cannabis operators the MSOs. It's like a scary buzzword, the MSOs, the multi-state operators. And I've had a lot on my show. Like I just had the CEO of Cresco Labs, which is a pretty large cannabis company in this country. And of course they're on different business associations which have taken stances against things like home grow and, limiting licenses, which people like myself say basically perpetuates the continued criminalization of cannabis. But like you say, just because of that, that doesn't stop me from bringing them on the show and having that honest conversation. And am I going to attack them the whole time? No, but am I going to ask them the honest questions that I think they need to ponder? I literally asked him, for example, can you put money, you've put money behind legalization in the past, can you put money behind things like home grow? Like, can we find a middle ground here? And, I'm sorry, but I don't hear journalists, and I've never claimed to be a journalist. I want to say that, like, I don't have any credentials. I'm trying to actually, I'm going to take like a little class on journalism just to try to learn a little bit more of the formal techniques, if you will. But again, I don't see people asking people like this these questions. And I think the same can be said about your content. And like, I don't know, there's this purity that you talked about where it's like if you stray a little bit away from purity by giving somebody a platform, it's like, but hold on, I'm still asking the right questions.
Yeah, I think it's
You
vital
follow?
to have those open conversations. And I want to commend you for some of the work I've seen you do. I think it's with a young representative of smart approaches to marijuana. It
Yeah.
might be, but I've seen you debate this guy, which is, someone who's a staunch prohibitionist. And I see both of you being friendly and diplomatic.
Yeah.
And to me, that's such a more interesting conversation. I think we went through a period of trying to cancel people, and then it became attractive to like, we're going to look for reasons to cancel you because you don't reify our agenda, whatever it is.
Right.
And again, this comes down to this tribalism, this us. And I think one of the opportunities that came along when I first started Mycopreneur is like within a year, I started getting invited to these corporate conferences. And then, at first as press, and I was clowning them to the point where they were like concerned about having me in parties and after parties because I made a reel skewering one of these corporadelic after parties that was like ultra exclusive. And they're like, how did you even get in here? Like you weren't even on the list. And so it's like, I've been doing this for a while. And again, I've never taken the opportunity. I've never tried to work for one of these companies. I've never tried to like publicly represent them or anything, but I've collaborated with them. Absolutely. And in the same regard, like I do one for us, one for them. This is a well-known tactic for creators and for people trying to make a living. It's like Michael Caine, the actor, when asked why he did the awful Jaws 2 or Jaws 3, he said, I actually haven't seen the movie, but I saw the house it bought for me. We can't always make art. And I think it's ridiculous to me to have, and it comes down to ideological worldviews. And it becomes like, okay, we're anti-capitalist, we're anti-corporatocracy, we're anti this, we're anti that. And, I just had a good conversation with one of my best friends who's a tenured professor at a very prestigious university for many years. And he's like, oh yeah, like I opted into this one thing, to support this one thing. And then they started pushing me to support 8 other movements. He's like, no, like I agreed to support this thing. There's this sense of like, you gotta be on this side and then you have to support these 8 different initiatives. And again, I don't buy that for a second. And I think like I was raised in the diplomatic community. Like I've been hosting foreign exchange students since I was 6. Like I had a student from Venezuela, who had to escape because the whole country collapsed. I had a student from Ghana who had whip marks on his back. And this is what I grew up with, hearing these divergent worldviews, different experiences, many close friends in the former Soviet Union and countries most people have never heard of. I've traveled to about 75 of these countries, oftentimes staying with these local families, not going in as like a, tourist staying in a hotel, but like going in, sitting on the ground, meeting people's families, getting invited to weddings. So I think there is a common denominator there. When I see these people are like, you guys are bad actors. The way that you're approaching this, you're creating this unnecessary false binary, and go for it if that's what you want. But then it becomes this like clout thirsty keyboard warrior trying to cling on for relevance. And I often think like, it's funny, I don't see these critics anywhere. Like maybe a handful of them, and I'm willing to have the conversations face to face. But it's so odd, just to get vitriol from the same camp of keyboard warriors. That's what it is. So, but I have had literally like other prominent journalists reach out to me and other, actors in the space who say, wow, like, thank you for doing this. They did it to me. Are you okay? I think there's this sense of like, we've been bullied, so now like we need to band together against the perceived bullies. And then again, like this even the subjectivity of like what is punching down. I have, you know, people that I formerly respected and like want to have a relationship with. I've done podcasts with some of these people, and they're like, this isn't satire, this is punching down, and like really angry about it. That's fine, you know, that's okay. But it's again, it's like, don't force your values and interpretations onto me, because there's, if you look at the actual number, like every single one of those people who were concerned about this very modest, mild posts that I made, they're getting ratioed. They're getting ratioed on their own posts, you know, like it's getting reshared, and that's fine. Like, I guess I like being buzzing and trending and all that, and happy to do that. But again, it's just like, it feels like fighting off little banshees with arrows. They're just like coming out of the bushes and trying to shoot arrows anonymously out of you. And it's funny, it's only X, dude. I'm on like 8 platforms and I have no issues. I have a super robust international community. You know, I've spent the last 10 years living overseas, traveling overseas. You know, I've been invited to officiate weddings for people in other countries. I have these close friendships. And then I have this like small band of people online who don't even necessarily hang out or spend time together in real life, who have decided to paint me in this very inaccurate way. And that's what the internet is. It's like, it's about narrative control, you know, who frames the narrative or whatever. And again, like they unfortunately picked the wrong target by coming after me, and I'm going to let them know that, and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. I just want to say that like what I view as the real problem with this, and I think you're on the same page as me with this, is like, I brought up the circular firing squad earlier, and it's, I was trying to think of where I'd heard that from, and it's actually a quote from, I'm just going to say a former president for now, and then I'll tell you who the actual president was. One of the things I do worry about sometimes among people in the United States, maybe it's true here as well, is a certain kind of rigidity where we say, oh, I'm sorry, this is how it's going to be. And then we start creating what's called a circular firing squad, where you start shooting your allies because one of them is straying from purity on these issues. The former president, President Barack Obama, said he believes this approach weakens movements. That's my concern with this, is this binary, this infighting. Because I know your heart is in the right place. Like I actually have like concern about that group. They're like they're like shooting like they're our own. I was about to say their own. It's our own.
It is,
You know?
yeah. Again, like I don't hold grudges, and I think it's different.
I like
to be
wish
like,
them well. You know
exactly.
what I'm
Like
saying?
I have this sense that I'm just gonna have like these little dogs nipping at my heels now, trying to like look for faults. Like I've been made, but in the false inverted sense of the mafia, where it's like now I have a mafia of thought police and internet police who are gonna be nipping at my heels. I'm like, bring it on, dude. If that's what you want to do, like I'm ready for smoke. You know, I pass that shit, homie. I see you just lit up right. No, I mean, I'm trying to be diplomatic. I'm trying to build. I'm trying to be logical, and you know, as logical as you can be with psychedelics. It's a fairly illogical experience, and I like the whole opportunity that I've gotten being thrust into what some could call the limelight is really like, I'm navigating this shit too, bro. I don't have a playbook out here to be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go get in an internet feud today. Like I could do that very well, and it would drive traction. And so often I intentionally don't do that. Like there's so much content that if you make a certain style of content, it's going to get traction. Twitter is a cesspool for that, dude. Look at like Ian Miles Chong, I think is his name. You know, I think there's Colin Rugg or something like that. A number of them, their whole shtick on Twitter is just to post rage bait videos where it's like, can you believe this, you know, 12-year-old beat up this 7-year-old? And then they get thousands of comments, and then they get, you know, fake clout points, which turns into money. I could do that. Like, it's not hard, but it's not interesting to me. So yeah, I'm moving forward.
What is it though with these crowds though? The cannabis crowd and the psychedelic crowd. Like I started in the cannabis crowd. I didn't even really know the psychedelic crowd was a thing. And then I got, you know, you saw me at one of my first conferences, and I'm like, whoa, this is a whole community. And one of the things I've noticed that is similarity between both of these communities is like this idea of purity, and like you can't talk to them. Like you say, it's this binary. And I wonder, do you have an idea of how we can get over that? Like how
Yeah, just beat them at their own game, man. Like, I mean, again, you won't see me coming out to people. Like I often speak in extreme, vague, cryptic generalities by design. That's what satire is. Like a lot of the stuff I've done is directly from like a quote that somebody gives me. So again, like, you know, when I think about and the is like this particular group, certainly they fall into that category, but I'm not making it in spite of them. I'm making it as like, this is what I see as an archetype, like this type of person, including myself, dude. Like I have gotten so much heat over the last couple of years to the point where like people who have very, very high lofty ties to government and industry have like told me like, you shouldn't say that. Like you should be careful what you say. So like I have put my neck out on the line, my truth. And then I decided like, you know what would be funny? Because I've made a name for myself as this vocal critic of medicalization and of corporatism, et cetera. It'd be funny if I made, you know, give myself a dose of my own medicine. And then there's this expression, hit dog hollering. A hit dog hollering, as far as I understand it, is like when people say, I can't believe you made this about me. They're just projecting. They're coming out being like, yeah, this is me that you made it about. That's giving yourself a lot of credit, dude. Again, the other thing people don't necessarily appreciate, I make a skit almost every day. You know the amount of pressure that brings to like remain on point, to remain building, and especially after getting deplatformed for basically no reason. I got deplatformed and they wrote about it in Rolling Stone. Like that's pretty cool. That made me want to start over. It's like people are actually listening. People actually appreciate me. And just to like, you know, be in this position now where I'm doing it, I'm working, and I've run afoul of other folks before, but oftentimes, you know, they don't want to make a big public issue about it. Like they'll call me. Some of these people have my phone number. They have DMs. They want to make a public stand about it. Like, again, and you know, this is fresh. This is like today and last night. So you can tell I'm saying my 2 cents about it. I'm giving my piece. And I anticipate these people dragging this out as long as it's convenient for them. And I have no interest in responding. I've said my piece, you know, it doesn't, you don't win internet arguments, you know, it's just like, it's just a race to the bottom. So I said my piece. I'll keep doing my podcast. You know, they can do whatever they want to try to bring me down. And then the other irony is, dude, I've already made another completely unrelated sketch since then. I've already transferred money to a nonprofit of indigenous collective that I work with. You know, like I do a bunch of this shit without trying to take credit for it, dude. Because to me, that's weak. If you're only trying to make moves in public, that's virtue signaling, you know? Like you get to where you are based on how people talk about you behind your back. And the way people talk about this group behind their back, I don't think any of them wants to hear it. And maybe that's what they want. Maybe they crave the attention, but like they do not have a good reputation. They've earned that for themselves. Go for it. If you want to try to cancel everyone and like critique everyone, and that maybe some legitimate critique to it. But I think that in particular, that is a misread and that is a hit dog hollering. And that's people like asking me to apologize for harm and to do this. And dude, you know how much I get asked to like take a stand on this about this. And I'm like, you don't know what it's like to navigate what I'm doing. A lot of these people, they have whole teams. They have whole advisory boards. They have PR teams, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And I'm speaking in generalities here. It's just me, bro. Like, I don't have bounce ideas off. And, you know, I mean, I have a lot of that, but like part of the beauty of being able to grow quickly and have your own autonomy is like, I'm not beholden to any of these, you know, like group forces, like, and maybe at some point I will be. I have very close collaborators, but again, I think people, they'll see it and they'll be like judging from the perspective of like, you have a whole team, you have funding in a lot of cases, you know, like you have a nonprofit status or whatever, and you're literally going after little old me who has an Instagram profile and a social media presence and, you know, a handful of people that believe in me. So, wow. Okay. If that's the fight you want to pick, dude, like I'm not interested in dragging this out, but like I'm prepared to just be public enemy number one just because I'm winning this quarrel, if you want to call it that. And I have definitively sealed the deal. And that's that. I'm moving on. Like in my eyes, I took a big W. Again, dude, I gained like 100 followers and a bunch of them are fucking PhDs, bro. These are not just like random anonymous accounts. And I see the other we could talk about is like there's this phenomenon on Twitter specifically of like anonymous accounts, you know, of people like vigilante justice warriors. And I just had a few of them, you know, coming at me right now. Fine, dude. If that's the world you want to create, like I will own that space. I'm not going anywhere. All you did was accelerate me. And then you made a lot of people interested in what I have to say. So they're actually doing me a service. I just wish that they would not do that and subject other people to that. Because quite frankly, it's bullying. It's bad actor situation. And it's ironic to me when Everyone else is always the bad actor. But the one common denominator is it's this same group against a revolving door of different people. Some of them are probably legitimate and they have good points. And then they throw that shit away coming after someone like me.
Yeah. Can I ask, it was interesting when I posted a picture, I had, you brought up Hamilton Morris. I was lucky to go to a lunch with him and a lot of other people. It's not like I was like sitting down with Hamilton Morris, I'll be honest. I mean, I was able to talk to him and stuff, and that was cool. But I guess what I wanted to say was I posted a picture of that, and I had people approach me at Psychedelic Science and even on my Instagram saying like, "Oh, not a good look." And I'm like, what are you talking about? I love Hamilton. I loved Hamilton's show. And I know I'm not totally ignorant. It's like Hamilton is now, what does he do? Consulting at some company now. And so they're saying, oh, he's evil or now or something like that. But again, I was just giving another example where it seems like there's like purity tests, you know?
Well, and nobody can even get on the same page, you know, like if you were to sit people down in a room, they would give wildly different answers about different things. And like, where's this line that you cross? And like, I've met Hamilton a number of times. I briefly interviewed him, and that's footage that I hope to get my hands on one day. I had a camera crew and I saw him and we did a little interview.
Yeah.
And there's this phrasing of like, only bosses have haters. So like, the more you try to tear someone down, like, I don't understand why you don't just build your own thing, like build a better mousetrap.
Right.
That's literally, I don't get it. Like the whole point of, and that's the premise of Mycopreneur. And I'm sure you get this. I often get this where someone comes in with like a super hot take. I'm like, have you ever listened to a Mycopreneur podcast? Have you ever read a single article? They're like, no, I just saw this video, you know what? And then people coming out like, what's your goal? Like, what is your point with all this? And I go, dude, I am like extremely public facing with a wealth of links in many different outlets. You know, it's so easy if you wanted to actually do that, but they don't. People want a bandwagon. They want to jump on, they want to shoot arrows. They want to project their, you know, sense of unfulfillment on you. Like, I'm extremely fulfilled, dude. Like, even after this thing where I'm like, I probably didn't need to respond, dude. Like, so many things have gone well today. Like, so many things just today where I'm like, I should take a stand occasionally, you know, like, if anything, I just earned myself a lot more opportunities. Literally within the last 24 hours, I think people are happy to see someone with teeth, you know, and I often hear this too, where people say, you're unaffiliated, you're your own organization. You can say things we can't. Like, these bigger organizations might want to respond. They just don't, you know, because it's a bad look, dude. Like, so yeah, I guess my whole point with this is like, build a better mousetrap. The whole point of Mycopreneur is literally a blueprint for how you can overcome and supersede the corporatocracy and the corporadelic space. Like, that space is going to exist. They're going to do what they're going to do. Mycopreneurism entails building up local community transparent groups, building up mutual aid. And like, ironically, this group that is, you know, throwing arrows at me now, I don't see them in any of these spaces, bro. Like, in the last year, I've been in Oakland, Austin, Los Angeles, New York City, Denver, Paris, New Delhi. I could go on and on and on. I've been in Sao Paulo. Every single one of these places, I've been connected to local community in person, building. So like, I'm not afraid of taking a few bumps on the chin by some random internet people. And then when push comes to shove, you don't see them anywhere. You could give them a mic on stage. They have nothing to say. Unfortunately, Twitter, etc., has become the soapbox for the village idiot, and all opinions are given accordance there. So like, if that's your only soapbox, you can have it and you can drag me through the mud all you want, but you have no idea about the wonderful time that I had in Kerala, India at the Mushroom Festival, and the lifelong friendships I built at their invitation, may I add, or about, you know, the calls I get today of people saying, thank you so much for this or for that. Dude, build in real life, build a better mousetrap. Let the haters say what they want to say. Come at me, bro.
Oh yeah. And you know, I was actually wrote that down. I'm glad you brought that up. I was gonna say, you know, I see people sometimes, and look, I'm not saying that I don't accept feedback. I do accept feedback. But I'm just saying, like, if you have, I have people exactly like you say, come in with a hot take, and it's like, yeah, have you ever even listened to the show? Like, for example, you brought up the sex work series. I got criticized for doing that because I was glorifying women. It's like, well, have you listened to it? Because I definitely wasn't like, yeah, let's suck dick and fuck it. Like, I was not doing, I wasn't, you know, being that way. I was like, why did you choose this line of work? Are you treated like a human in this line of work? What's bad about this line of work? What's good about this line of work? You know, like just honest questions that I feel not a lot of people are asking. And my thing when people come in with those hot takes, obviously, like I say, out of context, I always also want to encourage them, like, you can do it too. Like, there's really nothing special about at least what I've done. Like, I bought this little thing off of Amazon that plugs into this microphone here. I plugged it into my computer. I got Zoom. I'm putting this on YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff. Like, it's free. You know, I mean, I guess I got to buy the internet. I'm not trying to like neglect the different prices. And like I said, the equipment that I got costs money, but you can do this basic. You can start your own podcast. So if you don't think somebody's doing something well enough, I've always like wondered, like, why don't you go do it? Seems like you got a head on your shoulders. Like, you know.
Yeah, I got to make a point of like a few of these people who, when I first started out and started getting invited to these conferences or whatever, and I've always been connected with the underground and I've been doing it and connected there for years and years and years, right? That was like my circle and my spaces is the artistic, creative, weirdo community where psychedelics and cannabis were a huge part of that. And as soon as I kind of got thrust into this circle, to me, off the bat, I was like, what is everyone's issue here? Like, why are these warring camps happening? Like, who cares that much? Like, build a better mousetrap, do your thing. I bought a microphone. I have no editor. I don't even use like the AI show notes or anything. Like I come in, have a conversation, edit it, put out. People resonate with the perspectives and going to these different events and whatnot. I remember, hearing, oh, this person's such a bad actor and this person and that. And then you talk to them and you're like, wow, this is a really empathetic, sharp, intelligent individual. I may not agree with all of their perspectives, but what good is going to come from trying to bash them anonymously online? And like, if you go in the same spaces, the same is true, bro. Like the other irony to me is a lot of these like kind of what I would say entitled, privileged, think the world owes them, that everybody's a threat and this and that. Dude, they have not traveled. They have not like I've lived in Saudi Arabia in the regular neighborhoods, not in a compound. I've been to Baghdad and I've been to Hebron. I've been et cetera, et cetera. I was extremely vocal about that to a fault. And now, people want you to take a stance on this, that, and the other. And it's like, it's an incredibly complex diplomatic situation. And no matter what you say, you're going to have a hard time, right? So this is getting a little bit long in the tooth on that particular point, but like I did enough where I was kind of under tabs at a certain point, like had people kind of monitoring. I know for a fact they were, because I was making some pretty provocative content, and that's just what I do. And like the time comes to play your cards at the right time. And so many people have opinions and perspectives on when you should play your hand and how you should play it. I'm like, why don't you play your hand, homie? Like, let me do my thing. Like I've built my bit. I'm making my connections. I'm moving offline. Like I don't have to document every single maneuver and thing I support or what I do or where I do. It becomes this like bait and switch situation where people are like wired to react. They want you to react. They want you to do this. And like, sorry, I've been playing this game too long to like let random people tell me what to do and when to do it. So all that being said, like I've spent a lot of time in these places, and a lot of them even have asked me, they'll be like, what's up with these people in New York City or in the US who are just like complaining about shit all the time? Like, I grew up in the Soviet Union and then it collapsed. And then there was a coup in the country that I lived in after that. And my parents' business got burned down and there's no insurance. And we've been working for, 30 years to get over to the US. And then we made it. And there's like all these people who are just like constantly angry about stuff on the internet. Like, so whatever, dude, there are, a million different ways to prioritize your time and your energy. And I just don't understand, notwithstanding this podcast where we directly wanted to unpack this topic as it's fresh and relevant, why you can't just build a better mousetrap, dude. Like, do your thing. It's the barriers to entry are so low. If people like it and resonate with you, that's great. And if they don't, then why are you dragging other people down? And like a great example of this, a positive, huge fan of the organization is Oakland Hyphae and Reggie Harris and the documentary film, A Table of Our Own, where they said, these corporate actors, the people, the whiteness in the space, they're not going to give us anything and we don't want to take anything. We're going to do our own thing. Like, amen, bro. Do your own thing. Not everybody has to, be your cup of tea all the time. Do your own thing, build your own networks, and like, you're going to be fine, dude. Because as my friend Travis says, Babylon gonna Babylon. This idea that you can stop Babylon from Babyloning is giving yourself a lot of credit, and it's setting yourself up for a heartbreak, because oftentimes they don't even know the strategy, the connections. Like, these people aren't moving in Twitter. They're not documenting their actions necessarily. Like, if you're not at the table with them, you're not going to be even remotely aware of the actual long play. You just kind of like a bull seeing red and charging at the red. It's like, so yeah, lots of thoughts on this, but I try to be as transparent and accountable and honest as possible, and that's worked for me so far.
Hell yeah. Well, anything else on this particular topic? I just want to, I have an idea of how to close out the show that I think will be fun, but I wanted to give you the space because, of course, like you just kind of closed with, that's the whole point of this particular episode, is just to unpack this little microcosm and then onward and upward. But I wanted to give you the space.
Yeah, I super appreciate it. I guess my rallying cry from here on out is like, believe in yourself, invest in yourself, and build up your networks where you can. Like, do random acts of kindness for people. That's something I love, is like, you don't have to go out looking for a reciprocal relationship all the time. Just like hook people up, dude. The best advertising is word of mouth. I mean, I do the online smoke and mirrors clown show. It's fun. I enjoy it. I'm a content creator, but like the real opportunity comes when you're in the room face to face with people and you're building. That's where all of my opportunities have come from. Very few have come from like a random online connection. It's always like, hey, we've hung out a bunch of times. We got this thing going on. You know what? We like hanging out with you. So like, if you want to build in this space, like, don't let the smoke and mirrors fool you. There's a lot of people who are going to flex a lot of fake numbers, a lot of fake internet friends, a lot of fake internet love. But when the rubber meets the road, it's those in-person connections. It's those texts. And just to round this last bit out, like, as I was told by one of my mentors, they're like, if you're trying to get through to a company or a publication or this or that, they get so many emails, they'll open the email if they know you. They'll open the email if it's a friend of a friend who recommended it, who makes an intro. So like, do that. And again, like, feel free, whoever wants to critique Mycopreneurs' work, like, that's great. If you have an idea how to run more resonant, more impactful organization, well, I wish you luck in doing that. And like, if we can support each other and be mutually beneficial,
right,
great. But I have a very, very low threshold for the fake love and the whataboutisms and the he did this and he did that. So like, once you're out, I have a steel trap memory, dude. I have no interest in helping you guys at any point, and that's fine. But I also have no interest in trying to drag you down. So, notice I'm not dropping names and, doing stuff like this. I'm speaking in generalities. There could be lots of people that this applies to. And I at the end of the day, like, I'm going to take care of my circle and I'm going to give what's asked of me. And that seems to be working pretty well. So if people want to try to tear down my circle or tear me down, like, your work is really, really cut out for you on that end, my friends.
Yeah. Well said, Dennis. And I want to thank you for coming on to talk about this topic, because yeah, I know that shit like this can just be like, one of the things you said, I know I said I was going to wrap it up, but it's like, I can tell a lot of times when people are coming at me, like if they're trying to help me or if they're trying to hurt me, right? If you're trying to help me, it's great. I like take that and I'm like, you could do this better. Oh, if you shot this way, that would have been really cool. Like, thank you. That's a fucking awesome idea. But like, if you're coming at me just trying to hurt me, it's like hurt people. So it's like you say, it can be interesting to deal with online, but onward and upward, right?
Yeah, dude, I think the future is looking bright. I think if you look at your timeline and you spend all your time on the internet, you're going to think that the sky's falling in.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean that there's not like legitimate concerns in the world, but when has there not been? So like, go outside, build some friends in real life, establish some mutual aid networks, smoke some weed, hopefully homegrown weed, grow some mushrooms. And like, the world's not out to get you. The world doesn't owe you anything. Like, the other last bit is like, dude, I've been hit in the chin so many times. I've been stabbed in the back. I've had, mate, who doesn't have trauma, bro? Look at the world we live in. But I've chosen to deal with it. I've chosen not to project it on other people. And people can say you're privileged and you're this, and they often do. And I just have to take it. And that's fine. Like, I am extremely privileged. Doesn't mean I haven't figured out how to deal with the bad episodes that happen, because especially as an entrepreneur, especially as a creator, whatever, that is the path. The obstacle is the path. The trauma is the path. Trying to create defense mechanisms and ignore it or whatever, like, you're just going to project that out on other people. So like, take care of your own house, get your own house in order, have fun. The world's a beautiful place. People are inherently good. A friend of mine said he thinks humanity's 51% good and 49% bad. And I kind of like to think the same, and hopefully good and bad are relatively subjective, but have fun, don't go out there trying to tear people down. If you make your point, move on. You don't need to beat a dead horse. So thanks
Right.
again, Cole. I really appreciate this, man.
Yeah, and before we go, dude, speaking of it, I wanted to just close out the show by saying like when I saw you in Denver, it was first of all, I just ran into you and that was cool, of course, to be able to just meet you and chat with you. But when I saw your I don't know what would you call it? You hosted you and another creator. Do you mind name dropping them
Adam,
at
yeah,
least?
Adam Aronovich from Healing, a good friend. I was just hanging out
Yeah.
with him a couple weeks ago.
He was both of you were hilarious and the presentation was packed. I'm glad I fucking arrived early because I wouldn't have been able to fit in there, bro. I just wanted to say that you both killed it. And honestly, do you know, did they record that? Because like that would be a great thing to release.
I've got a recording. Yeah, I've got that, and I've got South by Southwest, and I
Fuck
have
yeah.
a few more. So I hope to at some point archive those somewhere. But yeah, I felt really fortunate, really grateful. And I just want to make one last point. Like Maps is this super controversial, apparently also incredibly influential. No one can deny their influence. And I've like directly criticized them, and I've directly said difficult things that I know that they weren't happy about. They've treated me with grace. They've treated me with empathy. They took it in stride. I didn't have anyone saying, can't believe you did this or you did that. Like maybe there was an initial reaction of like, bro, I don't know how we feel about this. But like the way, and to me, that speaks volumes versus other organizations who I didn't even name or criticize directly coming at me with a mob, a rage mob. Like, which
Yeah.
side of those is going to win in the long run? Okay, so
And
feel free. Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just gonna say I didn't mean to bring that up to I know there are people that are I'm glad you addressed that because I know that there are charged emotions about that. Like I didn't even know that. I was like excited to go to psychedelic science and they're like, you should feel bad about that. And I'm like, but I'm gonna meet a lot of cool people. Anyways, yeah, I had no idea. Again, I was new to the world and then I learned what some people feel about certain people and um yeah, it's all interesting. So but yeah, I was just asking you because like that was the last time I saw you and I was just curious, like we haven't chatted really how have things been and because we talked about this obviously, but how you been and how's the future looking, man? I'm sure you got big plans as always.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Dude, it's going about as well as it could go right now. I feel like I have earned these opportunities over the last 10 to 15 years of consistently having doors shut in my face and, being criticized for being a stoner hippie. And now it's the in vogue thing. Now it's like a legitimate professional career path. So that's really exciting. And I actually had to pull out of a few things. I've been given some really cool opportunities and like I'm supposed to be in Vegas right now, and I had a keynote slot this weekend. And I pulled out because I'm married, dude. I have a family. I've been traveling a lot. I'm trying to save to buy a house. Like I'm not super well off. I'm literally like bootstrapping and like cook at home most of the time. I might have some fun, opportunities. You see stuff online. I get wined and dined a lot, dude. Like that comes with the territory. I get, people want to
Sure.
hang out with me. I'm not like, I remember just going to San Francisco for a conference very recently, which was a really good one, Discovery Sessions. And I flat out told them, I was like, I can't come unless you guys cover my airfare. I'm not going to come. And then after I said that, a couple days later, they're like, we really want you here. Book your ticket. We'll pay for it. And then I go stay with a friend, and he takes me out and we go to like a $500 dinner. And I'm like, I'm not paying for that. I told them up front. I was like, I don't have that money. And they're like, nah, dude, we want to hang out with you. So again, I just want to reiterate, like, I'm not rolling in dough. I'm savvy. I know how to hack things. I have a good network, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm super excited about the future, about what's going on. I've got a lot of good news that I can't even release yet. As things start to come up, I will trickle them out. But I'm happy for the opportunity to be here. And I've really just found fulfillment in simple things, bro. Like it's Friday night right now. I'm like, hell yeah, let's do a podcast. I don't want to go out and like go to the bar and spend money. Like I want to do a podcast with Cole. I want to watch the Padres because I paid $60 for a season MLB subscription. I'm going to cook at home with my wife, my dog. Like that's the stuff that infinitely fulfills me. And all the other stuff I just see as like, it's a, passing opportunity. Like if some of them work out, great. If not, whatever. It's not for me. I strongly believe there's something there to be like, if it's not meant for you, like you don't have to stress and, push yourself too hard. Like you have to, if it's meant for you, like it's going to work, you're not going to have to go searching everywhere for it. It's going to be there. And then that other bit of like, when the student is ready, the master will appear. So like, you know, I've been writing as often as possible. I've been consistent with the podcast. I should have had an episode out today, but one of my friends who's a public figure wanted to scrutinize the podcast and go through it, and I totally respect that. That's their right. I always offer that right. Long story short, dude, like being consistent, finding fulfillment in simple things, not needing a lot of external validation. Like these have set me up in a pretty clear way for some awesome opportunity. And the day, it's all about like, can you, build a legacy that you're proud of, have some friends, like how many people are going to come attend your funeral and are going to come be a part of that? Like, I'm thinking in that term, like in terms of what kind of legacy and impact I can make. And I'm very proud of what I've done so far. Doesn't mean there's not going to be stumbling blocks around the way. But as Larry June says, I don't take L's, I learn lessons. And I feel like I learned a lesson with this kind of Twitter back and forth. Like I've learned not to take the bait. I've learned to, take my stand when I have to and move on when it's time to move on.
Yep. Well, in that end, I was just gonna say real quick to your point of like trying to bootstrap things, like folks, before we close, I just want to say that, I do appreciate your support, but yeah, I totally am bootstrapping this. Dennis, you know what I did to stay in Denver and ultimately go to Nevada? I lived out of a van for 2 weeks. Isn't that some hippie shit?
That's the only way to do it, bro. I think only once in Denver, because I was speaking, I got a hotel. I've slept on so many couches and art galleries. Just hack it, dude. Like, I mean, I think, yeah, people always want to make it out to be like the world's against them. But like, dude, I had a friend
You just got to figure it out. Yeah.
I have a friend who made a pass for one of these conferences. He couldn't afford the ticket. He could, it was like kind of hard to get in. So he literally went and bought like a lanyard and made a pass and they didn't get it close enough. I'm like, dude, just hack it, man. Just do the entrepreneur shit, bro.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, on that note, folks, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Dennis, I'd like to have you back on the Cole Memo anytime you'd like, but just know that I'll definitely reach out to you if I don't hear from you.
Anytime, bro. I'm a huge fan of your work. You've done such thorough, comprehensive, dedicated work. So I do consider you a journalist. I know you say you're not, but like you're doing the Lord's work right now. So thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yep. Well, folks, we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.